Hi everyone, good day. So my report is about judgment and proposition. So the difference between judgment and proposition is that the proposition are statement we make in the object language, that they are the things in the logic proper, whereas judgments are statements we make in the meta language about things in the language like preposition. For instance, A is a preposition, whereas A true is a judgment that talks about that preposition. So the other term is that the mental act which affirms or denies something, that's the judgment. The preposition is the product of judgment. It is a statement that affirms or denies something. And also, the preposition is a form of sentence as a group of words that expresses a complete thought. Alright, so the nature and the true meaning of judgment is that this necessities is discussion of the second mental operation called judgment, which in turn is expressed through a proposition. There must always be two ideas formed by the mind through a simple apprehension in order that the mind may form a judgment. As the mind draws a judgment, it makes a comparison between two ideas. In comparing these ideas, the mind enunciates the relation, whether they are in agreement or disagreement with each other. So, for example, we make a judgment such as it is raining because we have evidence. Because we have evidence for it. In everyday life, such evidence is often immediate. We may look out the window and see that it is raining. In logic, we are concerned with the situation where the evidence is indirect. We deduce the judgment by making correct inferences from other evident judgment. In other words, a judgment is evident if we have a proof for it. The most important judgment form in logic is A is true, where A is a proposition. There are many others that have been studied extensively. For example, A is false, A is true at time, A is necessarily true. Returning to the first judgment, let us try to explain the meaning of conjunction. We write A true for the judgment. A is true, that A is preposition. Given preposition A and B, we can form the compound preposition. A and B written more formally as A and B, but we have not yet specified what conjunction means, that it is what counts as a verification of A and B. For example, we have two ideas, Pedro and Filipino. In drawing a judgment, the mind compares these ideas, then it enunciates or declares whether these ideas disagree or agree with each other. If the mind judges that the term Pedro is in agreement with the term Filipino, the mind declares that Pedro is a Filipino. On the other hand, if the mind declares Pedro is not a Filipino, its judgment is that the two terms are in disagreement with each other. Based on the example above, we can say that a judgment is a mental operation out of which the mind compares two ideas, so that in comparing these ideas, the mind enunciates or declares the relation either of affirmation or negation. The next slide is the definition of a proposition. A proposition is a statement through which judgment is expressed. This means that propositions are building blocks of judgment. Without proposition, there can be no judgment. In as much as there are affirmative and negative judgment, there are also affirmative and negative proposition. Affirmative and negative judgment are also true or false. A true proposition is a statement that corresponds to facts. So, the sentences considered in propositional logic are not arbitrary sentences, but are the ones that are either true or false, but not both. If a proposition is true, then we say it has a truth value of true. If a proposition is false, its truth value is false. For example, grass is green, and 2 plus 5 are proposition. The first proposition has the truth value of true and the second is false. But close the door and is it hot outside? That is not a preposition. Also, x is greater than 2, where x is a variable representing a number, is not a preposition because unless a specific value is given to x, we cannot say whether it is true or false, nor do we know what x represents. Similarly, x equals x is not a preposition because we don't know what x represents, hence what equals means. For example, while we understand what 3 equals 3 means, what does air is equal to air or water is equal to air mean? Does it mean a mass of air is equal to another mass, or the concept of air is equal to the concept of air? We don't quite know what x equals x means. Thus, we cannot say whether it is true or not. Hence, it is not a preposition. Another example is that all Al-Qaeda fighters are terrorists, an example of affirmative and true preposition. All Abu Sayyaf bandits are not terrorists is an example of a negative and false preposition. Since a judgment must necessarily declare the relation of two ideas, and since a preposition is the expression of a judgment, it follows that a preposition must always be made as a declarative sentence through which a relation of denial or affirmation between two ideas shall be expressed. A preposition must always be expressed in a declarative sentence, not those that command, exclaim, or wish among others. So the judgment, it is the second operation of the intellect by which it predicates the agreement or disagreement of the attribute with the subject. By simple apprehension, the intellect perceives the subject and attribute separately, but after its operation, it compares them and affirms or denies their agreement. And the next is the elements of a preposition. It has three elements, which is the subject, predicate, and copula. So, since we know that a preposition is the expression of a judgment in words spoken or written, the elements of a preposition may be reduced to two, that is, noun and a verb. A preposition, as being the expression of a judgment, must contain as many terms as a judgment, but the judgment is composed of three elements, so as the preposition: the subject, attribute, or the predicate, and copula. So these three elements of the judgment or preposition correspond to three elements of the prepositions, which expresses the subject and the predicate or attribute, and the copula, which unites them. So the subject of a preposition is that it is something denied or affirmed, and it is generally a noun. For example, we hate corrupt government official. The subject is we, but in logic, the subject is those we hate. The reason why the term we cannot be taken for a logical subject is because we are neither affirming nor negating about we. So in the example, it is corrupt government official that qualifies for a logical subject inasmuch as it is the one that we affirm. The predicate of a preposition. It is that which is either denied or affirmed by the subject. So it is, other term is the adjective. And for example, all whales are mammals. The predicate is mammals. Such is the case because the term mammals is the one being affirmed by the term whales, which is the subject. The last one is the copula. It is the preposition normally appears in the present tense in the indicative mode of the verb to be. Because the word verbum of our mind is not complete without a judgment, and judgment is firmly constituted only by the copula. The verb to be is explicitly or implicitly the copula in every judgment and preposition, because by its identity of subject and attribute, or want of identity, is expressed, and every preposition predicates one or the other. The terms constitute the matter of the preposition. The copula, which gives being to the preposition, is its form. The verb to be or the copula is often contained in the predicate as I love God, which is equivalent so I am loving God. Besides the noun and the verb, grammar recognizes other parts of speech as the pronoun, adverb, conjunction, and etc. But logic is not concerned with these terms because they do not constitute an essential element of the proposition and because they serve only to represent, modify, or connect nouns or verbs. The example of the copula are, was, were, or, am not, is not, are not, was not, were not. The copula is a part of the preposition that expresses the affirmation or denial of the predicate term of the subject term. Right? And thank you so much for listening.